partners together, as well as stakeholders, as a community with a focus on shifting the conditions related to homelessness. And today, we are raising the awareness for youth experiencing homelessness and leaving with what each of us can do. We hope that you will engage and that you'll share how to help each other within your network. This meeting is being recorded and will be posted to GHA's YouTube channel. As a reminder, GHA's vision is safe, affordable homes for everyone in Greenville County. Can I get an amen? Our mission is to strengthen the partnerships and to broaden support in order to increase options for individuals or families experiencing homelessness in Greenville County. Our values at GHA are equity, integrity, inclusiveness, pragmatism, and courage. The values are intentionally displayed here at the front as successful initiatives tackling complex social problems, such as all that we have gathered here for the problem of homelessness. Also, if you're on Zoom, you can find the values on the GHA website under the About column. At this time, we would like to thank our elected officials that are joining us today. I believe we have with us Lynn Ballard in the room. So thank you, Lynn, and Joe Dill. Joe, are you here? I do know that the City Council has a retreat today. And since we moved the date for this for the pit count last week, we missed being with them today. Last but not least, on your table, you have some Post-it notes to submit questions for our panel discussion. As you complete your question, please hold it in the air for the host to collect. And if you are on Zoom, please drop your question into the chat box. Our audio capacity today does not allow for us to have you speak, and we apologize about that. But we will try to answer as many questions as possible. Without further ado, I will welcome up our next speaker, Alexandra Harris.
Hello, everyone. Can you hear me through my mask? Awesome. All right, so I'm just going to give you a 3-minute overview of the Advocate Working Group's progress last year and what we're looking forward to this year. And then after that, you're going to hear from Julie Meredith about another working group. So in 2021, we started the Advocate Working Group. It was super exciting. And even though it was our first year, we accomplished a couple really big things. We fully developed and designed an entire advocacy training academy that we're hoping to roll out soon to the whole county. As part of that development, we ended up doing kind of a beta testing with a really specific cohort of people with lived experience, a variety of life experiences, and some other demographic markers, got their feedback. We've kind of fine-tuned it, and now we're looking forward to what we're going to do in 2022 with it. So looking forward, we have 2 major goals. It's to roll that advocacy training academy out to the larger county, Greenville County, instead of a really specific beta group, have it open to everyone, super low barrier, potentially no barrier if we can get our magic working. And those sessions are going to be in March through October. And then our second really big goal is to kind of develop it into a train the trainer program so that we can have community advocates who are trained and ready to bring that into their faith communities, into their workplaces, into their, moms groups or whoever they hang out with, and they can lead their training too, so we can really get this community excited and activated and ready to be mobilized and talk about the GHA policy agenda. A couple of our strategies are going to try to do that monthly for the whole county, the training academy overall. And we're also going to look for volunteers to maybe monitor the local council agendas. I know we have a councilman here with us. We're going to get some volunteers to see what's on the agenda, see where we can mobilize our volunteers and people who really care about these policies to come and speak and and chat with our elected officials about what we care about and what we know can really make homelessness brief and rare in our community. I think I'm running up on my time. Look at that. So I'm going to hand it over to Julie Meredith, but I do want to say, if any of that is exciting to you, if you really care about advocating for some policies and advocating for the change that we know we can make in Greenville County, please talk to Heather Gatchell. She is one of the staff members of the Homeless Alliance. She's waving her hand in the back. And if you contact her, she will get you connected. We are always looking for more people to join the Advocate Working Group. Thanks so much.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Julie Meredith. I work with Safe Harbor, but I'm also the co-chair of the Collaborate Working Group. Our working group actually also started in 2021 for the purpose of exactly what it sounds like, collaborating. I think all of us who are service providers or people who care about this issue of homelessness in Greenville know that while we do have a wealth of resources in Greenville County, we do also have an information gap and a way that unfortunately it's not real easy for folks who are experiencing homelessness to navigate. What are my options? What are some of the choices that I can make if I'm experiencing homelessness or at risk of experiencing homelessness? And so we in 2021 have really done a lot of exploring of what this could potentially look like for us to create some type of tool to be able to make things a bit more easy to navigate. We also had to take a pause in the middle of the year as everything was coming down with American Rescue Plan dollars to be able to do some consulting with the larger community on how we could collaborate better on some of those areas. But in 2022, what we really are looking to do is to develop a resource list that is sortable, that is accessible to our community members who are experiencing homelessness and those who may be trying to help them, whether it be service providers, churches, whoever that may be. And we plan to really gather this information in a variety of ways through focus groups and listening sessions and surveys. Really looking forward to putting something together and having something that makes it easier for all of us, as well as the people we are working with each and every day to navigate the options that are out there. I would also echo what was shared before, that if you are interested in this work, please do talk to Heather or send her an email about your interest. We could definitely use additional voices and people who are passionate about collaboration to make homelessness brief and rare in Greenville County. So thank you all so much.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Bruce Forbes with SHARE, and since 1999, I've been helping people who have been experiencing homelessness here in the Greenville area and the upstate. And I'm excited about today's meeting, mainly because this is the first meeting that I can think of that we're focusing on youth who are experiencing homelessness. And so this is a very important event, and we're super excited that you are here today to be a part of that and to be a part of the solution. Just to give you a little bit of information, when the term youth is said in the world of homelessness, it means people ages 14 to 24. So on some level, youth are still minors, your 14 to 17-year-olds, but then your other youth are actually young adults. And, you know, your young adults, they can actually, you know, rent a place and things along those lines. So you might hear me when I'm talking today, going back and forth between youth and homelessness. Okay. Yeah, I can't even see it. So it's an important event today. We're going to talk about the definitions of homelessness because it gets a little confusing. So the one that we at the GHA have decided to work with and I like it, is families and individuals who lack a fixed, regular, or adequate nighttime residence. And so one of the things you'll learn in the world of homelessness is that there are different definitions of homelessness, and those definitions also correspond to different funding sources. And so some people might be able to receive services under one funding source because they qualify, while others don't. Thank you. The next grouping of definitions are, you see from the U.S. Department of Education. It's a little broader, pretty much kind of similar to what the Greenville Homeless Alliance talks about. Then the Department of Health, basically it's a person that lacks housing. You know, I've always felt that someone who doesn't have a key to a house or an apartment is basically homeless. Doesn't matter where you're staying. And then HUD has the strictest definition, and that's really people who are literally homeless on the streets, in a shelter, that kind of thing. Before I finish and introduce our next speaker, I wanted to kind of give you some quick statistics. And these aren't mind-blowing statistics, but it's kind of the tip of the iceberg. So in the Homeless Management Information database that many of the homeless service providers use in the upstate, there were 92 people, unduplicated people in the 13 counties of the upstate, ages 18 to 24, okay? Of those, 2/3 were female. Basically, 2/3 again were Black African-American. Only a handful were Hispanic or Latina. And the vast majority of those 92, 56 were in Greenville. So it doesn't sound like it's overwhelming numbers, but believe me, it's the tip of the iceberg, because many of the youth that are homeless are couch surfing and doubled up. So we're going to dive into that more today. So now I want to bring up Matt Caldwell. He's with the Mercy Center down in Columbia. Mac is awesome. The Mercy Center stands for Mental Illness Recovery Center, and he is also the chair of the South Carolina Task Force on Youth Experiencing Homelessness. So Mac's going to give you a lot of good macro information. Mac.
Thank you, Bruce. Thank you all for having me. I am absolutely thrilled to be here this afternoon to share one of my passions, which is putting in systems and figuring out strategies to mitigate the barriers and obstacles preventing youth from exiting homelessness. So thanks a ton for having me. The first thing I'd like to do is just kind of help create some context for our conversation. How many states have a dedicated law or set of laws addressing youth experiencing homelessness? The answer to that question is all states. All states have some form of the McKinney-Vento Act that governs homeless youth experience in our school systems. A lot of the time, unfortunately, that definition isn't sufficient, just like Bruce mentioned with the varying definitions of homelessness. And that plays out in how we track and monitor and even report our data. For example, if you're familiar with the annual homelessness assessment report that gets submitted by HUD every year to Congress, for the last 5 years, that report has estimated somewhere between 175 and 225 youth across the state experiencing homelessness. This previous year, the report was released last week. The estimated number of youth was 112. Well, I'm here to tell you that that is a significantly underestimated, underreported number. And we do have some more accurate numbers coming out of the different regions of the state and the homeless management information system data. For example, Bruce just mentioned 92. From 2014 to 2020, in the Midlands region, around 1,250 youth, individualized youth, were reported as experiencing homelessness. The State Interagency Council on Homelessness State of Homeless Report found an estimated 35,000 students within our school system were in situations that could be deemed homeless. Either they were couch surfing, they were doubled up, they were in some type of unstable housing situation. And the Youth Risk Behavior Surveillance System also estimated in 2019 around 22,000 missed cases of youth homelessness in our public high school system. So the number is far greater than what's being reported to our federal government, as well as what typically we report to our governing bodies. That's one of the reasons that in the state index on youth homelessness, which is a report that's been published the last couple of years by the True Colors United Foundation and the National Homeless Law Center, it found that South Carolina was ranked 49th in 2019 and 50th in 2020 in our response to youth homelessness.
Jeez.
The state index report, the site provides a summary for each state. It includes facts and highlights and recommendations for improvement. Unfortunately, like I said, we're sort of at the bottom, and a lot of that is related to our lack of a state organized response to the issue. I'm going to quickly go through some of the reasons I think we should care about these numbers. One reason is because the Youth Risk Behavior Surveillance System report estimated that 13%, when they did the survey, 13% of students were experiencing some type of housing instability in the previous 30 days. The survey estimated that 22,000 students had experienced homelessness, and it also tied experiences of homelessness to various risk factors, which are up on this right-hand side. Things like sexual victimization, physical victimization, bullying. And we know from data released by Chapin Hall at the University of Chicago that youth who do not complete high school are at the highest risk of experiencing future homelessness. To take that a step further, we also know that in South Carolina, around 35 or 40% of youth who exit our state foster care system at some point are pretty likely to be homeless by their 21st birthday. We also know that around 35 or 40% of youth who exit our Department of Juvenile Justice will at some point experience homelessness. So it's a much larger issue, a much bigger problem, I think, than we sometimes account for. Additionally, youth experiencing homelessness will use emergency departments and the hospital system as a means to get their mental health and their physical health needs met instead of using a traditional primary care physician or mental health provider, which drives up costs to the hospital system because a lot of the time they can't pay for those services. And behind me is a slide from SC Price Point, which just estimates the Prisma Greenville costs of an inpatient hospitalization for some type of psychotic episode. But the costs are extremely high. Also, for those youth who do have Medicaid, the costs are traditionally pretty high. And in a report that was released by our continuum, the Midlands Area Consortium for the Homeless and United Way of the Midlands, they found that between 2014 and 2017, almost 700 youth were part of a state system of some kind, either were on Medicaid, were in DSS custody, or were part of DJJ, then became homeless, and around $10 million in Medicaid claims were paid out for their services over that period of time. So that's just a lot of money going towards mitigating some of these concerns. The youth cohort, that 700 youth in the Midlands, the report concluded that the cost of care for the medical needs of those individuals experiencing homelessness is significantly greater than for those who have some type of stable housing. We've also seen since the onset of COVID that youth who come to our youth drop-in center in Columbia, the number of youth, the rate of youth reporting mental health issues has increased by 131%, from 32% prior to COVID to around 74% in 2021. So lots of reasons to care about this issue. I just sort of want to close with some suggestions about what we can do to think about our data differently, to think about how we talk about and report our data differently. I think sometimes we get lost in the weeds at times by reporting on our outputs rather than reporting on our outcomes. When I say outputs, what I really mean is the number of services we provide, the types of things that we do day in, day out, versus outcomes, which are those things that youth are actually able to achieve because of those services. Our youth programs at Mercy operate with logic models that link activities and outputs and outcomes, short-term and long-term outcomes, and that helps us understand the differences. I'm going to give you a few examples of what I mean by outputs. In 2021, Mercy served 100 new youth, and 154 youth total came through the Youth Drop-In Center. We helped youth complete 97 applications for mainstream benefits. We served 7,000 meals. We provided 21,000 basic needs services, and we gave out 130 month-long bus passes. Those are great numbers, especially during a pandemic when we're always having to adjust because of the guidelines, but they don't really tell you anything about the youth that we served, and they don't really tell you about how the services impacted our community. So again, how we monitor, collect, and interpret our data helps us to understand the true effectiveness of our services and the true impact in our communities. So when I say outcomes, what I'm talking about more so is, who made progress in their mental health treatment. Well, at Mercy in 2021, 86% after 6 months made progress, made improvement, reported improved symptoms. 92% were stably housed for at least 3 months. 97% of youth in our youth home made progress on their plans of care. 94% were reunited with supportive adults. 74% completed their high school education or equivalent. So how we think about and track and monitor that data can contribute to filling the gaps that exist currently in our statewide data, because there are a lot of gaps and a lot of data points that are being collected by providers at the local level, but not necessarily being translated into statewide data or data being reported. To close, I would like to share one thing that is happening. The South Carolina Youth Experiencing Homelessness Task Force was created last year in response in part to legislative testimony that we provided before the Joint Citizens and Legislative Committee on Children. They felt confident that a centralized body of some sort could be beneficial. And so we launched the task force under the governance of the Interagency Council on Homelessness. And the task force is currently working on a mechanism to conduct a statewide count that will be replicated off of the Charleston youth count that was conducted in 2018. And we actually have the principal investigator, Dr. Robert Kale, who is helping lead that charge to implement that across the state. So we're very hopeful that in the next year or two, we'll have a comprehensive count and have a much clearer picture of what our state data actually is. But I would just encourage you to continue tracking, reporting, do whatever you can to make sure that our numbers reflect the true needs that exist in our community for youth in schools and youth who are on the streets or in shelter systems who face tremendous barriers to exiting and remaining exited from homelessness. Thank you again very much for having me.
Hey y'all. Do me a favor, if you can hear my voice, take a breath. Do that one more time. If you can hear my voice, take a breath. Good afternoon and happy Black History Month, y'all. My name is Jocelyn Bowler-Bruce, and I'm the Assistant Director of the Center for Inclusive Communities at Furman University. I'm also a member of the Greenville Homeless Alliance Collaborate Working Group. In my current role, just like in my previous job, I worked with college age, or what we call transition age youth. Bruce shared some context on what that age group is. I became familiar with the work of the GHA and the homelessness providers during my time at Pendleton Place's Youth Resource Center. Often, the face of homelessness is folks who experience chronic homelessness. We imagine these folks well into their 50s or beyond who have been navigating this space for years or perhaps decades. We may think of youth homelessness as smaller children, maybe grade school, elementary, who are living with adults in unsafe living conditions or who are moving from family member to family member. When we think of those transitioned age, I know at the YRC, the age is like 17 through 24, that 18 to 24. When we think of these youth for whom homelessness is their lived experience, we may think of those who are aging out of systems like foster care, or who are caught up in the criminal legal system like DJJ, or those who are graduating out of other supportive services. But there, at the YRC, in that little building on Pendleton, homelessness shifted from a statistic and it got a new face. It took on the face of a 17-year-old who came out to their adoptive parents as trans and for whom home was no longer safe. It took on the face of an 18-year-old who was living in their car after being assaulted by a family member and who needed just a little help every now and again. It took on the face of a 23-year-old who, after being unfairly terminated from a job, turned to the coping mechanism of drug use, which re-sparked the addiction that began when the youth was 12. It took on the face of a 22-year-old and her toddler who wound up in a series of abusive relationships that were connected to her housing, and all they wanted was a soft place to land. It took on the face of a 24-year-old who, in telling his own story, began with the words, "My first memory was having to hide." Hidden, beautiful, reckless, scared, alone, hilarious, divine, and unseen. They're also the reason that we're here today. We in Greenville County have an expansive network of resources and touch points for folks who are unhoused, or who are experiencing homelessness. The companies, faith community, shelters, nonprofits, schools, and organizations represented here are but a sampling of the resources and touch points in this ecosystem of community care. They are representative of the sectors and the players that make the work of combating and eradicating homelessness possible. And yet, when we take a serious inventory and audit of the resources that are specifically dedicated to transition-aged youth, watch this. Oh, wow, maybe I'm going the wrong way. Thank you, person in the back. So we go from this to this. We see that this ecosystem shrinks drastically. You'll note that youth have touch points with service providers that are more densely populated in the federally and privately funded area. You have places like Share and United Ministries in Pendleton Place, and you see community organizations that are right in the middle between federally and privately funded over to community like Pride Link. They are connected to this work because of the substantial population of unhoused youth who identify as LGBTQ. You'll also note a density of touch points in the mental and physical health sector because mental health concerns, addiction, physical health concerns are also prevalent in this population. We are so grateful for these providers and for their work, but I want you to notice that every organization that is still highlighted here, save one, serves youth in their general service group, but not as their target population. And I'm gonna brag on Pendleton Place for a second. This is my table over here, my table over there. So Pendleton Place, not just because I used to work at Pendleton Place, but because they are the hub for youth services in Greenville County. They employ a team of professionals who, through a model of trauma, and y'all please don't mistake housing insecurity as a trauma. They employ trauma-informed care, connect youth with other service providers who together create an individualized community of care, and not just a path toward housing, but ultimately a path toward wellness and a path toward thriving. Let me ask you a question. I often do this thing to my students where I say, I'm going to ask you how you're doing, and I don't want you to tell me good, fine, busy. So I'm going to ask you, how does this make you feel when you see this? For me, it's very disturbing, it's saddening, and it feels not so full of hope, but also not too full of despair. If you, like I am now, are considered a cross-sector partner, it means that your current work is not specifically rooted in frontline homelessness work. If you are like me, both aware and removed, but you still see the ways that you can be accountable to those at the margins of our communities. I hope that this piques your interest and that the rest of our time today challenges you to ask things like, how can my faith community see justice in tending to those who have been marginalized from community as a spiritual practice? You may ask questions like, how can my company or my organization or my restaurant downtown begin to think critically about how and who we allow to apply for our jobs? You know, doing that incredible intentional work of disentangling homelessness, criminality, and survival. Thank you for bearing witness to the structures that render youth invisible and for partnering with those on the front lines of this justice work.
Well, good afternoon, y'all. I'm Annie Mertens, and it is the honor of my career to introduce myself to you as the Executive Director at Pendleton Place. I love this organization. I am so touched by what Jocelyn had to say about the work that we're doing, and I can't take credit for it. I've got incredible team members here. As she pointed out, a team here. I've got Jaminho, I've got Ashley Howard, I've got Maziel Stedman, Jill Wilkie, and who you'll hear from shortly is Josh Crocker over here. They're the ones that are doing the incredible work every day. I just get to talk about it. That's still an honor, and it's still a big deal. But I really just feel grateful and want to recognize and name that. We were very lucky to have Jocelyn for a while, and we miss her. But Pendleton Place was founded in 1975 with the idea that children have the fundamental right to safety, security, and success. We opened our doors as a shelter for foster youth, and have really honored that heritage as we've evolved over the last 47 years. Our mission is to keep children safe and families, support families in crisis through intervention, prevention, and assessment. We do that through our array of programs, and today we'll focus on what we do with homelessness. And I have a tech curse, which is evident because I cannot advance my slides. Okay, so we'll see if I can keep in time with the slides themselves. Our programs include our assessment center, which provides medical and mental health evaluations for children entering foster care. Smith House, which is our residential group care facility for teens in foster care. Our emergency youth shelter, and our youth resource center, which is our team that we have here today. The reason why is because we truly believe that humans have inherent worth and dignity, and they have the right to be safe. They have the right to be successful, and the work that we do every day is informed by those beliefs. They're also informed by these numbers. If we look at these numbers, we see that of our homeless youth, 26,000 have aged out of foster care across the country. 36% of foster care alumni have experienced homelessness, and this is true in South Carolina as well. 29% experience substance abuse, 69% report mental health concerns, 50% have had involvement with the juvenile justice system, and 60% identifies LGBTQ plus, a part of the community. At Pendleton Place, our last quarterly data showed about 23% as identifying as part of the LGBTQ plus community. But we live in an area where that's stigmatized. So we think that our numbers track more closely to the national data. We also know that chronic homelessness, costs about $35,000 a year per person, whereas rapid housing costs about $10,000 a year per person, and transitional housing costs about $32,000 a year per person. So we know that there is a financial imperative to actually ending homelessness or making it brief and rare. We can't end it though until we work together, work collaboratively, and change systems and change the policies and practices that actually impact and allow for homelessness to exist as a phenomenon. We believe in partnering with purpose, which we're doing through GHA, which we're doing with our other partners across the state, with a task force that MAC is leading, and honoring that lived experience of the folks that we work with. So how are we doing that? We're doing that because through our delivery of services, which really began 2.5 years ago, after taking information from the community and realizing that there was a strategic need to address youth homelessness. And so we really have embraced that opportunity, and that change from our original plan of providing homeless or shelter for children in foster care to providing support, access, resources, care, compassion, empathy, and the fight for equity for youth who are experiencing homelessness. So our two programs that really focus on that are our youth shelter and our youth resource center. Our youth resource center, which we've got, again, a great contingent here from today, provides 3 key services: our street-based outreach, which includes our drop-in center, as well as housing coordination and case management. That's the Youth Resource Center in the background. I don't know how well it shows up on this screen, but you can see it's a very welcoming, home-like environment. It really respects the inherent dignity and worth of a human who's coming into our services. It's not cold, it's not sterile, it is nothing that looks run down. It is beautiful inside, and that is meaningful to us. In our first 2 years, talking about outputs versus outcomes, we delivered more than 4,200 resources or services to our client participants, that can include showers, that can include laundry services, that can include Wi-Fi, case management, even a conversation. We've also delivered more than $150,000 in direct housing supports for youth exiting foster care. Additionally, our team, again over here, has provided more than 600 hours of case management and case coordination services to over 130 youth. So again, thinking about the data, 92 individuals experiencing homelessness who are youth. Knowing that we've done 130 in 2 years, that should tell you that that data is, again, underrepresented. We also provide referrals to outside services because, again, it is collaborative, because, again, we partner with purpose. And so it is important that we work with our friends, our fellow providers, and our folks within our community who can address those immediate needs that we're not equipped. Speaking about DJJ experiences, Mac touched on this, Bruce touched on this. In the past couple of years, we spent less than $200 a day to deliver this entire array of services plus coordination, as opposed to more than $500 a day for secure incarceration at DJJ. Knowing that we've got a lot of youth experiencing homelessness who've gone through the DJJ system, or kids who leave foster care who could very well end up in the DJJ system or the other criminal justice system, that's a great return on investment. That's a great cost savings to the community. This is a testament from one of our participants. Their quote says, "I feel safe when I'm at the Youth Resource Center, and I would recommend the Youth Resource Center to other young adults in need of support." So what we're doing there, I think, is really critical and really key to helping us end youth homelessness, which will in turn mitigate chronic homelessness in the long run. I really believe in looking at things from an upstream approach and understanding that we don't come to a situation without first ignoring certain members of our community, without systemically dismissing them or keeping them from opportunity. And so if we are working with our youth today, we're helping prevent that chronic homelessness for tomorrow, which will result in a more prosperous, more successful, more safe, and more secure community. I do want to touch on our emergency youth shelter because it works really closely with the YRC, our Youth Resource Center. We opened just a year ago this month. We provide 24/7 shelter, safety, and food to minors aged 12 to 17, supported through federal grants, as well as a young adult hall for 18 to 21-year-olds. That can provide counseling, shelter referrals for less than $150 a day. Again, compared to that more than $500 a day that DJJ costs. And I can't even see with my glasses and the lights, but I will take that as a cue to finish up. Again, we're not only equipping youth with success and opportunity, we are actually protecting our economy. In the past year, we've delivered 850 nights of care, 1,600 meals, 80 counseling sessions, and 320 case management hours at the EYS alone. And we have a comment here that my stay taught me about who I could reach out to in the future if I needed help in life. And I'll end with a story and a quick video. In April, we had a young woman who was almost 18, just a month away, come to the EYS seeking shelter, seeking care and compassion because DSS said that she was too old for foster care. She had lost her mother. Her father was hurting her. We gave her a haven. And on June 3rd, I saw her in the atrium at Pendleton Place with a cap and a gown. Greenville County Schools high school graduation. I asked her, she deserves it for sure. She's an amazing young woman. And I asked her, well, what are we doing to celebrate? This question was lost on her because at 18 years old, she had turned 18 in April. She'd never had a party. She'd never gotten a birthday gift. And so that night, we were able to give her the one thing she wanted and never had, which is a party and tacos through a donated taco bar. A month later, on July 1st, she moved into transitional housing because of Ashley Howard, who's sitting here in the audience, where she remains today and still calls Ashley to ask questions about the color of curtains she should hang in her house. So I wanted to end with a little video, a very short clip with her letter to us, snippets of it. This is not her in the background, but she ends with, I can't wait to share my success story with y'all. I just got to, but you can go ahead and play it.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Thank you, Annie and Pendleton Place, for the great work that you're doing. And so now I want to invite our panelists up here to have you hear about their wonderful things that they're doing as well. So can all the panelists come on up? And each chair is valuable. Also, I want to invite Megan McDaniel, Director of Community Response for Youth and Foster Care with Fostering Great Ideas. Hope, yeah, go ahead and pull that back, Brenda, so you don't fall. Hope, who is going to be up here with us, is sick, so she's not able to be here with us, but we have Megan here, and we appreciate it, Megan, very, very much. Thank you for coming on in. All right, so if you take a look at your handout, you'll see the wonderful photos of all of us here, and you can read a little bit about what each of us does, because I don't want to spend a lot of time on that part. But today, we really want you to walk away with some answers to these two questions, and we've been really already talking about that a lot already. Why should we care about youth homelessness, and what can we do about it? So again, my name is Bruce Forbes with SHARE. I'll just go down the line real quick. We have Irene with Greenville County Schools. We have Megan with Fostering Great Ideas. We have Josh with Pendleton Place. We have Christina with Department of Social Services. And we have Brenda with Miracle Hill, okay? And so Irene, I'm gonna ask you the very first question here. In about 2 or 3 minutes or so, can you tell us what is the most pressing issue or serious concern or barrier for the youth and young adults that in Greenville County Schools?
Sure, Bruce. Obviously, I'm coming from the education aspect of it, being in working with Greenville County Schools. What I found is that generally speaking, the students who are experiencing homelessness within Greenville County Schools, our main issue barrier is transportation, because these students are so unstable, lack of housing, lack of financial assistance, getting them from one area to the next, getting them back and forth to school, getting them to the career center to follow up on that process to complete a certificate with the Career Center. So that's probably one of the biggest issues that we run within the Greenville County School System.
Okay. Yeah. Megan, I want to give you that. Megan, I want to give you that same question. Okay. So the most pressing issue or serious concern or barrier that youth and young adults are having in your organization?
Well, we work within the foster care realm, and it's the barriers. Transportation is a huge one, and stability. So no family, they're foster care, they're about to age out of care, and they're not aware of any programs, or if they are, they do not have the access to apply to these programs that DSS may offer or other organizations may offer. So I'm a foster parent as well, and I foster teens. I've fostered over 30 children, and they come in and they have nothing, and I give them something. And you know, I'm younger, like closer to their age, so I think they feel relatable. And I give them food and clothes. I give them the resources and everything, and I'm just short-term placement for now until they find something else. So it's definitely transportation. I hear that a lot. I hear financial, and I hear the lack of resources. Let me take that back. I hear it's resources, but there's barriers. Like, you have to work to get this. You have to be in school to get that. Well, until we address the but for or the exception, we can't do anything because there's rules to this. So they feel like, well, I can't work because I don't have a car. Oh, well, I can't go to school because I don't know how to apply. So those are the things. It's addressing the barriers to the barrier kind of thing, right? Oh, yeah, gotcha.
Same question. I think I had a hard time with this question, and I was going to answer with 3 different ones, but I'll just narrow it down to one and try to be, a good panelist. My answer is, I think, lack of natural supports and having someone in their corner. There's also everything that Irene and Megan said, as well as access to mental health services, to gainful employment and economic mobility opportunities. But I think the thing that sets apart the few folks that we've seen who have had a great deal of success in exiting homelessness versus our folks who are still struggling to exit homelessness is having somebody who's vouching for them, someone who is there for them, that they can reach out to for support, for help, for questions about how to apply for school, how to access these particular kinds of services. And obviously, my staff at the Youth Resource Center can fill those gaps to an extent, but we're limited in our capacity to do so. And so I think for a lot of our people, just having someone who is advocating for them, who is available to them, who is willing to take the time to invest in them, and to be available when they need something, when they have trouble navigating the things that we probably reached out to a parent or an aunt or uncle or a grandparent about. I think that is maybe not necessarily a barrier, but the greatest need that I see.
Thanks, Josh. Yeah, so the phrase natural support is going to be something you're going to be hearing a lot of today. Christina.
Hey, everybody. And I work mainly, well, only really with foster youth that are exiting foster care. So my scope is a little bit smaller, but the overlap is so large. I agree with everyone. And when I thought about this question, it really boiled down to me to 4 things. Number one, as Josh was saying, and as Foster, great ideas touts all the time, a great indicator of success is a relationship with at least just one supportive adult after they leave. So that is huge. Somebody that can text them or help them do a budget or help them figure out how to pump gas. So I feel like that is number one. Number 2, I know we've had several people mention transportation. We have resources in the upstate, y'all. We have a lot of resources, but our kids can't get to them. So we'll find a resource that helps you find a job. And they say, well, they have to come in once a week, but they can't do that. They don't have a car and they don't live in the city. So I think transportation is so huge. The resources are there, but there's no way to get them to our youth. I would think number 3 is transitional housing, especially for youth exiting foster care. They've never had anybody explain to them how to rent an apartment. They don't have a credit. So they don't know how to maintain an apartment right away because they don't have help to do it. And I think transitional housing out of foster care, such like Pendleton Place has, it's just so needed. There was a 4th one.
That's all right. You can save it.
Financial literacy, but I'm going to go.
Brenda.
Yes, Bruce, thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. So the obvious answer is not the answer, of course, for me. I would agree with everyone that's here, and because there are, as I think Christine has eloquently stated, there are resources in our community. And yes, indeed, our youth need all of that. But I want to express to you that what our youth really need and what they've been missing is to be valued. Our children need to know that they matter. Our children need more than the resources of the hands that are reaching out to give them, but they need hands reaching out to embrace them. I believe that this will reduce the likelihood of them leaving programs. One of the things that I see as the vice president in children's ministry, specifically foster care, is that a lot of youth can't wait for the very day when they turn 18 so they can go and be free. What is freedom? Freedom to them, but what they really need, and it has already been expressed by Josh, the natural resource, that natural connection. And the research has said, every one of us needs someone to support us. Our youth need to know that you value, and they need to be restored to joy that they have lost. And so I submit to you today, consider the grief that they've had because of the family that for whom they were born in many times have let them down, and they need someone to pick them back up. So I encourage you, yes, we do need your handouts, but we need your wrapping arms around these youth to help them know and to help them find the resources. It's one thing that they're out there, but it's another thing that individuals can identify them and go with them and be there with them. And when they fail, to encourage them to hang in there and to keep going so that they can be comfortable and also achieve the goal for which God has created them to be. So I just encourage you to consider extending your arms to embrace the youth.
Thank you, Brenda. That's awesome. Yeah, relationships are the key, basically, to solving all the problems. And so, Brenda, you said that eloquently. All right, so I'm going to just put this out to the group and whoever's feeling compelled. So how are the barriers for youth experiencing homelessness kind of unique or different from the barriers that other homeless populations might be dealing with? Anybody?
Christina already knew. Yeah, sorry. Were you going to go? No, you can go first. We can rock, paper, scissors for it. I think I was thinking about this question as well, and I don't know that I would say the barriers necessarily are unique, but the way that those barriers present themselves to our youth and young adults. So our youth, a lot of times the young adults and the youth that we're seeing at the Youth Resource Center, they don't have any work experience, right? They may not have completed high school. They have, again, very little to no natural supports. They don't have credit, like someone else said, or in some instances, they may have really bad credit because unfortunately someone who was caring for them used their social security number to turn on the gas or turn on the power at their next apartment. And so our folks see a lot of the same barriers that chronically homeless persons see, but the way that those barriers affect our youth and our young adults is, I think, unique, and in some senses exacerbates their experiences of homelessness. And so you think, I mean, I was talking with some of our other staff at Pendleton Place earlier this morning about, we were 18, 19 years old. If we had been just magically expected to be able to navigate the world and be fully independent and self-sufficient without any kind of help or supports or folks that we could reach out to when we have questions or we aren't sure about this, that, or the other, how we would have fared for ourselves. And I don't know about y'all, but I would have been SOL, right? And that's the nicest way I can put it. I needed help. I'm so thankful. I had wonderful parents that I could reach out to when I had questions about this, that, or the other, and who, could field my uncertainty about my future and the next steps for myself and push back a little bit when I had some ideas that maybe weren't the best. But a lot of our folks don't have anybody that can do that for them. And so, I think this kind of societal notion that for whatever reason, so many systems have embraced that an 18-year-old is all of a sudden an adult is just kind of ludicrous, especially when even on a biological level, we know their brains are still developing for another 5 or 6 years. And so I think my answer to the question is not necessarily that the barriers are unique, but the way that our youth and young adults experience those barriers is unique and in some senses can be more challenging.
I just want to say, fostering great ideas, and thanks for pointing that out, you guys. I'm the director of community response, and we are the middleman, and we do help with resources. I call it I'm from New York, by the way, so I say call it. I call it the catch them before they fall theory, because it really is what we're doing. And we, like you said, can only do but so much and take them but so far. But I also challenge you guys to think about this girl sitting here who was in foster care and a 10th grade dropout and homeless and whisked away 5 hours away from their family, that I am now a college graduate and was a teacher for Greenville County. So when Annie came up and said real examples, you're looking at one. So I say that to say that there's people walking around that you just don't know what they've been through. You don't know what they've overcome. So every teen that comes in my house, I call it the 3 weeks of love, because I don't tell them my real story, because I want them to think that I have it all put together. And then as soon as they come and ask me something like, can I have pizza? And I'm like, don't ask me, this is your house too. And I say, sit down and talk to me for a second. Do you know who I really am? And they're like, no, whatever, you're so, And I'm like, no, you have no idea. I almost aged out of care and I dropped out of school and I was poor, broke, lonely, and SOL. So it's caused me to really give back. So to feel valued, can I ask that they feel valued in absence of all judgment? Can I ask that they feel valued even when we don't agree? And can I ask that they can become me? And it's so true. And I ask that all you guys, if you don't know Fostering Great Ideas and what, and it's not like a punch to the company or whatever, even though we're great, it's the resources that we have that are really great and I believe in. I didn't have the help. I didn't have a hand. As a New Yorker, I felt lost and I came down here and I was like alive. And I said, well, how can I give back? And I encourage the youth also who come in my house, do something for free. Because if you do it for free and you do it with all your might, imagine what you would do if you made money from it. So they come with me to volunteer. They come with me to do all these things. I bring them into my classroom before COVID. And I just want them to experience somebody that they might see on a picture that they never thought. And it's like, you have no idea. So can we please know that there is them, but there's a me inside of them as well.
And I wanted to kind of jump
Go ahead.
into the same question. I'll be really quick. A different way of looking about how our youth are different than maybe other groups of homeless is they are really good at technology, y'all. So this is a huge opportunity for us as providers to tap into that because we can reach them on so many different platforms. Does it have to be face-to-face? Could we do a Zoom meeting? Could we do FaceTime? These are the kinds of things that this generation is so good at. So we need to get good at it too, so that we can reach them better.
That's a great point. It is. Thank you, Christina. I want to go to another question now for the group. So I want to go upstream a little bit. You all are doing a great job with young people who have become homeless or ended up in the foster care system and things like that. But I want to ask the question about, so what's going on in our society where these young people are ending up in your organizations, in your services? What's happening out there? What can we do as a community, as a society, so we don't have a whole bunch of youth experiencing homelessness?
Bruce, I want to address it from its conception. It's because of the systemic issues that our community are faced with. Parents themselves are cycled abusers. And so they don't know how to parent, and the children are continually being subjected to abuse and neglect, and they're learning. You see, learning is a positive thing when you think about it, but whatever behavior to which you are exposed, you are learning. And many of the behaviors that our youth who grow up are neglectful and abusive behaviors. And so what we need to do is we need to go upstream, and we need to make sure that we're putting in place resources and services for the birth parents. We need to make sure we are supporting them and that they're getting the attention that they need likewise to be able to train their children up the way they should go, so that again, the cycle can stop. First, we've got to believe that it can stop. And if we believe that it can stop, then we'll do something. And you say, well, what do? You make yourself available to these families, which helps to remove the distrust in our community. We don't trust each other. How do you expect anybody to move beyond the circumstances? And so I encourage us, all of us, to look within ourselves and see what we're doing to connect to our neighbors, see what we're doing to connect to these birth parents who are struggling. Because listen, yes, it's a bad environment at the time, but it's what the children know. It's the trauma that they grow up into. And even when they come to a loving family, it is what they remember. And the children want to go home. And so we need to be doing everything that we can to help them be reunified, go back to their families. And that is possible if we do provide even resources for the birth family to reconnect with the children.
Thank you, Brenda. Anybody else?
Yeah, I just
Christina?
wanted to quickly add, because the question that you asked centered around the environment right now. Have y'all seen rent in Greenville right now? It's crazy. So, our first apartments growing up, they were never like this. A 1-bedroom in Greenville sometimes is upwards of $1,300. And these are kids that can't even afford a car. So when you're asking, what are the environmental factors here? I mean, they can't afford it. They can't afford to live. They don't have skills, or not yet. They just turned 18. They haven't gone to school. They don't have skills to get better jobs for the most part. And then COVID happened on top of all of this. So we have kids getting fired from their jobs because they have to take time off for being sick. We have kids that are missing huge portions of work because they have to, stay at home. And, obviously we want them to, but these are huge factors in whether or not they experience homelessness or bouncing around is a big one that we see. I don't know if we've talked about that, where it's like, they're not homeless this month, but then they got to get a new apartment next month. So the atmosphere that our kids are transitioning into adulthood in is really hard right now. And to
Absolutely.
not see that, to think that they just dealing what we dealt with, is not true.
Yeah, Irene.
I also want to add to that in stating that there's an increase in single parent households, especially around teenage single parent households. Greenville County School District has Parenting Plus, single parent Parenting Plus program that addresses parents who are students who are parents themselves and trying to help them. And it's really hard for them to be a parent and trying to be a student, while at the same time trying to maintain a household. And like you said, income is so high, they can't afford it. They can't get a job. But they also have to be concerned with who's going to take care of my child while I'm supposedly trying to be in school. They don't have that support system that you mentioned. So they're in need of that as well.
No, it's a great idea. And, basically from a poverty standpoint, unfortunately, single parents, especially single female parent households, have almost like a 50% poverty rate in this country. And so it really shouldn't be that way, but that's kind of what it is. I want to remind everybody, if you have any questions for any of the panelists, to go ahead and use the sticky note and raise your hand with it. And we'll do our best to answer those questions. And we want to thank Tina Harris with Favor for being our first person from the audience with a question. Are there boots on the ground in our area to service our homeless youth? She sees a lot of folks, a lot of these folks in homeless encampments and needing assistance. So Tina, I don't know if this helps answer your question for you, but there are resources out here, and more are hopefully going to be created after today as well. Anybody want to respond to that at all? Or I think Josh?
About what the boots on the ground services are?
Yeah, maybe some outreach or something.
Sure,
yeah.
absolutely. So Jill Wilkie, who is our youth engagement coordinator, just went out today with Jimmy No, who's our homelessness prevention programs manager, to conduct street outreach to try to connect with a group of young adults that we heard about in encampment near Woodruff Road with Chris Rubio from United Housing Connections. So we have staff members who are involved with our local homelessness service providers on a weekly basis, both the weekly case staffing that they have, as well as weekly outreach. And we'll also, now that Jill's on board, she's been with us for all of 3 weeks, so she's a well-seasoned veteran now. She will soon be conducting youth-specific street outreach and looking for folks, looking for our folks and where they're congregating. We know, for example, they're hanging out at Spill the Beans, they're hanging out by the library, that they're hanging out at Project Coast around lunchtime. And so, yes, there are boots on the ground doing the work. We had some difficulty maintaining that during COVID and with some other mitigating factors that we had to consider, but thankfully we're going to be able to resume those soon and have continued our partnership with other service providers doing street outreach.
Yeah, Brenda, go ahead.
One of the things that we find with specifically that age range is that sometimes there are dual issues going on. So there can be homelessness as well as substance issues. And so I'd like it to be known that certainly Miracle Hill, we have substance treatment facilities that not only provides it for housing, but it provides treatment for the youth, both for women and for men. And then it also, if the youth continues, the youth is partnered with a mentor to be there and support them throughout the program. In addition, it also provides transitional housing for those youth as they walk and navigate the process. But the thing that's, that's important is the navigating, and that they're not navigating it independently, but they're navigating it with the supports of the agency, of the ministry, as well as with the individuals that are paired with them to help them walk the way and feel comfortable that if they do fall, someone's there to catch them.
Megan?
And also, I beg that if anybody in this audience has a job and would let a youth come sit side by side, that side by side experience for youth and their success and everything like that would be absolutely amazing. We just started doing that at FGI, and of course I let them sit beside myself, but just in any, especially IT is really huge. The medical field, huge. Anything admin is huge as well. But the side-by-side experience, letting them know, get a touch, smell, taste of what it could be on the other side. And also, very importantly, representation of, there's a lot of expertise, but no experience. No youth, and I'm speaking from real stories, wants to walk in a room with professionals, MSW, doctors, and nobody has experienced what they've been through. That has to be the most embarrassing, feeling like you have to live up to something. So it's not that a lot of people feel, oh, what's not working or what's not, what did we, this youth, they were so motivated. Nobody's went through what they've been through. It's unrelatable. So yes, we focus on what the degrees are when jobs are open, or, what experience do they have professionally. But in this work, we have to look at personal experience on that resume during the interview, so these youth can feel cozy and comfort when they walk in the door. So they know that they're not just meeting somebody who graduated from USC and who they thought was so privileged and had everything that they don't have. And it's like, well, who are you to tell me and give me this list that I'm supposed to do? And it's a great list. And even for me, and sometimes I have to break down and just go in with sweatpants on and a t-shirt and like, look, I'm just like you. So I feel like that we need more experience. Of course, expertise is great, but expertise in the eyes of an 18-year-old makes them feel less than from the minute they step foot through the door. And I can tell you that from just being me.
Bruce, I'm going to add to that. So if there's anyone else that can contribute, paid mentorship and paid internship for a homeless student can go so far because they don't have income coming in anyway. Yes, your value experience that's like hitting a nail in the hammer on the head for a lack of choice of words, I guess. But if you're an ability that you can offer some type of financial assistance, and it can be something as simple as $5 an hour. I mean, I can't stress that enough for the students that I work with primarily.
Right. All right, I want to do a shout out to Tina for starting with that first question, because now we have a whole bunch coming in. It's awesome. Not in any particular order, but before I ask a question, just want to remind you that this is Megan McDaniel. She's with Fostering Great Ideas and Director of Community Response for Youth and Foster Care with Fostering Great Ideas. And she's substituting pinch hitting for Hope, who is sick today, unfortunately. So we appreciate Megan jumping in. All right, how much time do we have left? A couple hours? What do we have? Do we know? It's 3:14. We can go. How much? 13 minutes? Okay. Oh, I love this question. Are there any plans out there for transitional housing? Has anyone taken on this project for youth?
I've heard some talks. Okay. I'm not
Okay.
going to say what they are, but it is a definite known need in the upstate. There are many talks about these kinds of programs because when youth leave foster care or they leave a bad home environment and become homeless, they don't know what to do. They've never been taught, and that's not their fault that no adult has ever sat down and explained to them what a budget was. They had bigger things to worry about, like where am I going to sleep tomorrow? So it is a need that transitional housing is basically, where they have an apartment or they have a room, they pay a little bit of rent, but they have someone there that's also helping them. It's not like a DSS case manager where it's very intensive, but it's like a supportive adult that checks in when they need them to. And that's what we need. And there are talks.
Right. So I'm going to also respond to that question too. So HUD is one of the larger funding sources for housing. And I don't know, 5, 6, 8 years ago, for whatever reason, they decided to not support transitional housing anymore. And that's when they made the switch to rapid rehousing. Well, so rapid rehousing essentially is the lease is in the tenant's name. And so it's very, very difficult to be able to convince a landlord that, hey, I've got a young person here with no rental history, et cetera, poor credit, and that person's going to sign the lease because they're going to be responsible for the payments. But in the interim, we at Share, for example, we're going to go ahead and make those payments, right? And same with Pendleton Place, et cetera. Well, that's not going over real well. With transitional housing, we at Share, we would be the ones that have the lease in our name, and we would put the folks in those transitional apartment units. It worked much, much better. And then you've got time to work with the folks to get them up to speed, get them a job, et cetera, that way. So part of it is lack of dollars that are out there, federal dollars that are out there that will support a transitional housing program.
Let me jump in real quick, Bruce.
Yeah.
We do have transitional housing at Pendleton Place. We've got 10 units that Ashley manages across Greenville, Spartanburg, and Anderson counties right now. We are trying to get more. We're having very active conversations, even as recent as this morning, about going for some more funding, not just HUD, but also the Family Youth Services Bureau, to increase our transitional living portfolio, because we recognize that it is the most useful, most impactful intervention as far as housing goes for our particular service population. So we have some, we want more. If you know anybody that can put in a good word for us, send them our way.
Right. This might be a question for Mac. What factors are considered relative to South Carolina being 50th in homeless response, compared to other states?
I think one of the factors that the state index report cites is the system response and the environment. So how do, kind of like what these guys have been describing this afternoon with children exiting foster care, that has a lot to do with that ranking. Additionally, a lack of standardized definitive language that influences that ranking, as well as some of the, our state doesn't have a centralized office that governs a response to homeless issues. All of those services are either embedded within existing state offices, or more likely they're being governed by continuums of care and local providers. And so all of those factors contribute to that ranking.
Okay. Thank you, Mac. All right. Here's a question for our foster care folks. How many families successfully are reunited after the foster care experience with their children versus chronically losing the children to the foster care system and beyond?
So I want to clarify that my role in DSS is only working with teenagers transitioning out of foster care. So I don't work with many kids who do get reunified. I work with almost exclusively kids that don't. So I don't have the answer to that.
Probably Brenda and or Josh could probably answer.
49%. Thank you.
49% are
49%.
reunited. Is that where 49% are
49% are reunited compared to the rest that.
51% don't get reunited. So
Okay.
half.
All right.
2 minutes. Now we need more. Sorry. Let's see. There's a question here, which is great, about teaching emotional intelligence to build lasting relationships. Absolutely. That's a great skill set. And does anybody know who teaches those kinds of things? Megan?
Emotional intelligence, meaning mental health, kind of.
EQ, those kinds of skills.
Well, I'm a teacher, but I don't.
Yeah, okay. It's out there. I know the services are out there. All right, last question for all of you. What would be a game changer in how Greenville responds to youth homelessness? What services do we need that we don't have?
Yeah. So we're going to go short because probably everyone has an opinion on this.
Yeah,
but
I want everybody to answer that.
My
one.
big ones are we need to figure out transportation for these youth. If we can't, then we need to seriously consider more virtual appointments with these youth and with meeting with their resource providers.
For me, I think we need buy-in from everybody. Everybody. You may think, well, I don't have the ability to affect how folks have access to transportation, or I don't have rental properties, or I'm not wealthy, so I can't donate thousands of dollars every year. But you probably know somebody, right? Like, somebody who can afford to pay an intern a small wage so they can get some work experience, or someone who has an auto shop, so a youth who lives out of their car can get their vehicle fixed for cheap or free, right? So I think we need buy-in from the community, because again, natural supports is critical. And while you might not be able to give monetarily, or you might not have an immediate need that you think, oh, this is typically something that nonprofits ask for, or that charity organizations are asking for, you probably have a connection, someone that our youth and our young adults would benefit from being connected with. So I think we need buy-in from everybody across all sectors.
You're good. You're good.
I would say, look, I just lost it, Josh.
I'm sorry.
Well,
Sorry.
Okay, I'll just go ahead and jump in. It'll come back to you, I'm sure. I'm going to jump in and add to what Josh says. For me, primarily, it would be a stronger support system for the kids that I work with. They need someone that you said it so well, someone that they can communicate with, someone that they can identify with, someone that they can share with more than anything else, someone who's willing to listen to them and be non-judgmental. So often we all are face to face with a variety of challenges for one reason or another. And unfortunately, the homeless students that I work with, their challenges seem to be much greater than what the traditional student would go through. So if someone would just be willing to have a listening ear to help those students.
I remember. Okay, so I was going to say, with the expansion of the Hispanic population, as an ESL teacher, we need to be more inclusive with that set of population. I adore them. They used to have me on the foster parent list as for people who don't speak English, like I had a Russian, and I just adore. I don't know, love is love. That's the only language that stays even here. Okay, so that's number one. Number two is loosen the ring of expectations on youth in general, foster youth in particular. They are not going to sit, walk, talk, do as our children would. We have to know that the expectations causes more failure than we even realize. Give them room and leverage to fall down. Bring people in with the same experience who have overcame, knowing that foster care alumni are the real professionals. And also, you could have all the book work and paperwork in the room, but sometimes at night on Thursdays, I just sit down and listen to them. And that goes for places that I've heard like Pendleton Place does since moving down here, and a lot of other teachers do a lot of times, but we are limited so much what we can do and say nowadays, but I still give out free hugs every day. So.
Brenda, you have something for 30 seconds?
Yeah, we need to. South Carolina has a very high rate of children in foster care who don't have homes. And so they need you to be present with them. They need you to go out and tell people that, you know, while I can't be a foster family, can you be that? And so why don't you become an ambassador?
All right. Please give a round of applause to all of our panelists. And yeah, we can go ahead and get, yep. Thank, can you hear that? I want to thank Susan and Heather for putting on a great event here. And we really appreciate the great work that the Greenville Homeless Alliance is doing here to help end homelessness and make it brief and rare in our community.
Thank you, Bruce. Yeah, thank you also to all of our panelists and speakers today. We are committed to get you out of here by 3:30, and you are welcome to stay and visit if you choose to do so. But if you need to go, we understand giving an hour and a half of your time is a lot. So we've been really intentional today, and we do believe that there's all more that we can do collectively together. This slide behind me shows the distinct role that the three kind of coalitions who are working in the spaces of providing programs and services through our upstate continuum of care, as well as we now have the Greenville Housing Fund that has an affordable housing coalition working to provide more housing. As we've heard, rent is so high. We also have the Homeless Alliance, which is working to ignite change and address homelessness, specifically here in Greenville County. So as we are here today, it's not this place we've come to, but it's where we're going to go and what we're going to do when we leave this place today. And as you'll see on your table, we have suggestions to offer. There's also free hugs, as we've heard. How can we leave today and embrace a youth as Brenda has challenged us? So as you go, you might think about, you need to maybe brace yourself just a little bit, because those in this room, you've decided this is important. Some of you are dedicating your life's work to this, but there's some we know who are out there who will say, you're wasting your time. So I recently shared on our social media a quote from Bruce that said, when we lift up one person, all of us are lifted up. And I like how Megan challenged us today to how do we catch someone as well before they fall? So we've highlighted a few of the organizations that focus on youth and did take significant time in the planning of our meeting for today. And I would say, how is it not each of our job descriptions to leave this room and work to lift up one person? So as the Homeless Alliance logo is displayed, what we say is that we are going to join together, and we've had over 50 joining us on Zoom today and those in this room here today. And when we join together and lock arms and we stand shoulder to shoulder and we focus on that youth, in this case at the center, we know that we find hope in a better Greenville. And we truly believe that something special is happening because of this collective work. So take those resources on your table, use the QR code if you want to activate that to look at the digital links. My friend Deb Richardson Moore says money solves problems. So if you feel so inclined to give in some way, please do so. And then we have a unique advocacy opportunity I just want to briefly mention, and we're going to send out more information through email tomorrow. And those hot links will take you to that as well. But please use your voice this month during February to help us as nonprofits make a case with our state representatives to support nonprofits through American Rescue Plan dollars, as well as a proposal put together by SCASAD that'll help
on the housing side. So I don't want to spend too much time on that. But just to close, many of you know that I have a friend named Robert, and I love that we talked about technology, especially during the pandemic. Robert has sent me a daily text, and often that's what lifts me up. And so I wanted to share today the text that I received from him. It says, "Dear past, thank you for all the lessons. Dear future, now I'm ready." So as you go from this place, go and do and be and give free hugs and help us, help us especially find that one person for our youth.